Welcome, Andre. Thank you so much for being here today. We're super excited to have you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Everyone, my name is Andre, and you can also call me A G Flitcher. I am a fantasy, thriller, adventure, and even psycho thriller writer. I try it all.
Love that. What are your books about?
Well, the series I'm wrapping up now with the last book I'm working on is called Boone and Jacque. And actually, uh, here's the first one. Okay, Saddleton Secret. Saddleton is the town where it all starts. So when they're in their preteens, they discover magical history by accident, and everything starts to unravel the closer they get to the truth. And then all these, magical kings come up and creatures, and the adults in town become very infatuated with power, and those who are not in the highest level of power are trying to, I guess, kiss up to those who are highest in power. And then as they get older and they either endure more pain and chaos in the town or outside of town or in a new place or in an even more strange place, they learn a lot about themselves without parents or adults. It's all from each other. And that's what a lot of my readers love, is that Boone and Jacque and whoever comes their way, they all learn from each other. And that's kind of the whole, message and theme of this series, is learning how to evolve as a person and how to learn from those you love and those that come in and out of your life.
That's amazing. What inspired you to write your books?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, because when I wrote the first one, I was really I was trying a new method of writing, which means when I wrote this one, which was the first one, um, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to turn my brain off. I'm not going to be so paranoid about when I finish it, and not put in effort, but more like have fun writing it instead of being so stringent and I guess overly structured about where the story is going. I want the characters to kind of tell me the story as I go along, because the whole point of the story is that life is chaotic. So without being disorganized, I create organized chaos throughout the story. So what really inspired the series is really just my own, personal, you know, ups and downs, and those around me, and how I learned not just their hurdles and tribulations, but how the parts of me are reflected in others. And that's how I was able to create other characters. And therefore, making it very well rounded, where it's almost like all the secondary characters are echoes of the different emotions and parts of personality of the main characters.
Love that. When writing your books, who are you thinking of when it comes to who your books are for?
Those who are trying to understand themselves and are going through trauma. A lot of what my readers and even professional reviewers have said is that a lot of the energy and evolution in the characters and the world building does revolve around traumatic events that have really tested the characters, not just human spirit, but the confidence in themselves.
Amazing. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
I've been asking myself that question for many years, because it's been a very up and down uh, journey. And so, if I'm being very organic about when I started, it was like 9 years ago. Because 9 years ago, I finished my associate's degree in creative writing, and then tried to be a screenwriter. Didn't work because didn't realize how competitive the industry is if you don't know anybody. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to abandon this. But then it got a bit quiet for a couple of years because I didn't have the confidence in myself as a writer. So I changed careers. I became a personal trainer for a year, and that didn't work because I still had a big passion for writing. So I tried to write a children's book with a friend of mine who was an illustrator, and that didn't work. Not because we were arguing with each other, but it's more like I didn't understand how she wanted to approach things, and I want to approach things differently, but I didn't know what I was talking about. So I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree in creative writing, and that's really how this series started because I got the education I needed.
That's so amazing. What is your schedule like when you're writing a book?
Well, my sister says I look tired all the time. So I have a full time job working as a maintenance worker at a zoo. So I only have the brain capacity on my days off. So really, I'm working 60 hours a week because even though I'm just writing 2, 3 hours at a time on my days off, I'm constantly thinking and putting in notes and everything. So, but surprisingly, I'm able to keep up every week. Every week I'm able to do 4 to 5,000 words. And whenever I've done interviews in the past, they've asked me, how do you do that? How do you do it consistently? It's like, well, the story's already in my head. And plus, I learned a long time ago that you just have to turn your brain off in terms of um, being paranoid about the execution of what you're writing. That's really what writer's block is. It's not that you can't think of anything, it's that you are too nervous to uh, trust yourself with the execution of the scene because you're like, well, how do I do this? What's the best idea here? It's like, well, the best idea comes later. You just write the first thing that comes to your head, and then you can fix it later. Because usually you have the groundwork done, and then you look at it and go, that could be much better, or this can be erased. No, basically you're just restarting until you find exactly what you want out of the story.
That's amazing. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Uh, it changes sometimes, but usually any kind of white noise. So when I'm writing, it could be something as simple as a 10-hour loop of crackling fire or wind and rain or classical music. Um, I mean, there's a typical writer thing of coffee and sugar, uh, but that's just to keep me occupied. Sometimes when I when I sit down to write, I do get the habit of I need to decompress from whatever I was doing beforehand. So I'll watch something on YouTube that's funny to kind of relax myself, and because I have severe anxiety and I can't write when I'm anxious because it just means that the energy in the scene or whatever I'm writing is going to come off the page. And if the scene doesn't require that, then I'm kind of hooked if I go with that energy. So I just try to, do something kind of mindless before I start writing.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Um, Typically coffee, but there is a new thing I try sometimes. And this is if I'm really wanting to be wired. My dad taught me how to make Turkish coffee, and I've made it with my friends a couple times, and they're like, Andre, how do you eat the? How do you drink this? This is so strong. I'm like, well, I don't drink it all the time, uh, but yeah, for sugar, um, any kind of pastry, usually, um, nothing salty. I don't know why. For some reason, salt doesn't agree with me when it comes to writing. I think because there's so much acidity in the coffee already that it just makes me. So I just stay away from that.
Love that. What books do you personally enjoy reading?
My favorite author is Stephen King. In fact, with these paintings you see here, there's Stephen King novels holding them up. I think this one has Fairy Tale, which is the new one, And this one has the short story collection Skeleton Crew. I've, I mean, I wasn't a Stephen King fan to start with. I started with Harry Potter, like any average fantasy reader says. But when I started reading Stephen King novels, I found it truly fascinating, his ability to take fear and make it personal. Because to me, fear is not terrifying if it's just gore and blood. It is scary in the literal sense because it is a jump scare. But what truly connects with you in terms of fear is if it has a human aspect. And that to me is true fear. Fear in terms of like, grotesque visuals is appealing to a certain crowd because it does scare them, but it's only for a moment. But true fear that sticks with you is something that reminds you of something in your life. That to me is true fear. And that's what I try to incorporate in my writing. In fact, once this series is done, I'm going to be writing a serial killer origin story called Black Rose Cocoon. And I've already talked to a couple university professors that teach criminology. And I've watched like a million, true crime shows and documentaries. So, because there's something about not dealing with trauma, and especially if you have an impulse that's not good, that is truly terrifying to me. Because the people that have a tendency to use impulse to numb the pain or just are not aware of it, that is terrifying to me because they're very unpredictable. There's no helping them. Even if you do, it doesn't really create a permanent solution. They may become somewhat aware of their actions, but it doesn't mean that they're going to stop. It just means that there's more reasoning to their actions.
Love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
For books, well, actually, when I was a screenwriter, it was Harry Potter, and maybe the first book of Boone Jacque. But as for what has continued to spark my interest in writing, has been the book It by Stephen King. Because first off, it's a really big book. I never thought I'd have the ability to read something that's over 1,000 pages. But when I had to read it, or I chose to read it for one of my final classes for my bachelor's in creative writing, I was like, the fact that I can read this in 7 weeks while going to school full time shows that there's something about this book and this author that has invigorated and engrossed the passion I have for storytelling. The fact that he can make something so simple as monsters in a book and youngsters as the main cast and make it sound well-rounded and bigger than you expected it to be, and really involve the world that they're in is amazing to me. So yeah, I would say that. I mean, there are other authors that inspired me, like Daniel Handler or Cormac McCarthy, Tolkien, all these well-known people, but I also try to, diversify my reading. I mean, I just got a few books of John Grisham. I never thought I'd read anything about lawyers, but I know that my mom used to read those books, and I was like, let's give this a try.
Love that. What type of books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Well, I was 11 when I started reading Harry Potter, and all-time favorite, it was that series, but I did also read Edge Chronicles. It's not really a well-known series. It is, well, the artist is well-known. I don't quite remember his name, but yeah, I would say Harry Potter. It was the first series as a kid that I was able to read. Like, to me, when I was a kid, 50 pages in one night was pretty crazy. In fact, my parents said that I couldn't see the movie adaptation until I read the book. It was my motivation to read. So I was the one person in the house reading up all night so I can see the movie. And then I would get disappointed when there was not enough seats for the midnight screening or whatever.
Love that. On the other side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if something comes out, you're going to automatically grab it?
I mean, like as an element of the story or the author?
Um, Either it's the series that like no matter what, if it's like partial series or if it's an author that like no matter what book
Oh,
put out, you're going to grab.
no, I'm not like that. I don't like just because I'm a big Stephen King fan doesn't mean I'm going to read all of his books. And it's not that I'm that he doesn't. It's not that I lose faith in him. It's more like if the story's interesting, I'm going to read it. If it's not, I'm not going to. Like, let's say some another author's publicist says, "Hey, can you read this book for free and then give us a review on Amazon?" It's like, well, I'm only going to do it if I like the book. And not just because it's free doesn't mean I'm going to put an honest review. Because if it's not positive, I'm not going to put it up because no author wants that. No author wants to see uh, negative criticism because it doesn't help them. The whole idea of doing a review is to help them. So it's not me being snobby. It's just my personal interest.
Amazing. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
Well, that's actually a good question because that happened to me where I stopped reading for a while because I was going through the rabbit hole of YouTube and just not having the energy or enthusiasm to read. So when that happens to you, you just ask yourself, well, what made me start reading in the first place? What was it about that book that intrigued me? And it's not that you go reading that book again. It's more like you think about what was it that first got you into reading and then find something easy to read. Like when I read Series of Unfortunate Events, that was my rebirth of getting back into reading because when you when you're in university and you have to read textbooks or even just fiction, it's all academic in terms of the purpose of it. But it does encourage you to question what is it about storytelling and reading books that is important to you, that connects with you. That's the big thing to me is how does how does each book you read connect with you? If it doesn't connect with you, then that's why you're not reading anymore because nothing new or not that you're aware of it has connected with you.
Love that. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
Don't worry so much. You know, it's there's no there's no issue with being bad. Like that's the biggest problem that I've seen with even like writer friends of mine that are trying to write a book, but they're too scared to even put pen to paper because they are such perfectionists. And what if no one reads this? What if I invest all my time and no one wants to even, you know, pay attention to me? Uh, Basically, write for yourself when you first start out. And think of it as gifting something to yourself instead of others, because that's the biggest paranoia that most novice writers have is that if no one reads the first thing I put out, why should I bother continuing? So instead of focusing on other people, focus on yourself. Even the first two or three. It's not about making money or even getting people to like you as a writer or a human being. It's just about having that practice and ability to create something. You know, not every first song an artist has created was awesome. You know, it was their first time putting something together. That's really the core of what I'm trying to say here is that you're you have your first hand at creating something, and it's not going to be pretty. I guarantee. Even if you are a gifted writer, the practice of storytelling is very important, regardless of how technical and knowledgeable you are. It's just not gonna be, you know, flawless in the beginning.
I love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Um, I guess how fast I bounce back with what goes on in my life. Like last year, I went through a romance scam for 3 months, and um, I lost a lot of my sanity and trust in people a few months after that. But the more I talked about it with other people and figured out how to disperse my trauma in terms of energy, it really showed me the truth behind being interconnected with others. So that's what people found surprising about me, that I went from being a very reserved person who thought that he had to fix all of his problems by himself because that's how he was raised, um, to trusting others. And of course, I learned to differentiate who I trust and don't want to trust and just use my instincts. Um, but yeah, that is something that surprises people. The other thing that surprises people, um, that I'm willing to take risks when it comes to writing, because people thought that I was just going to write fantasy and thriller once the series is done. But the thing is, this series to me has been a practice round. Even though I've gotten awards and it's continuing to get attention, and I'm trying different ways of advertising myself, like with TikTok and YouTube and all this social media that's being created every day. Um, I know I'm going to keep trying different things. It's just a matter of what is right for the story.
That. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Um, yeah, don't be scared. It's okay. I mean, it's okay to be scared, but don't let your fear be what holds you down. Fear, believe it or not, is a good and useful emotion for being decisive. It's always been painted as this monstrous, dark, negative thing that bothers people and that see as a hindrance on their future and what it could be, and therefore creating the whole mentality of I need a 9 to 5 job in order to survive. It doesn't mean that you um, should lose sense of yourself. You have to trust who you are, and not so much in terms of like putting that into your writing, but letting that be part of your writing process. Because if you're purely strict and extremely professional towards yourself, the fun in writing goes away. That's why a lot of novice writers tend to give up in the beginning, because they think, oh, this is a very hard thing to do. I have to put in so much time and energy and money. Why should I bother with this when I have a good job? And it's like, well, if it means something to you, then you should at least give it a try. I mean, even Stephen King would write books and not like them and then put them in the jar. And then his wife would read them and say, what are you doing? Just publish this. This is good. So you have to not only trust yourself, but trust others, especially if they value your work. If there's something of value in your work, whether you see it or others do, put it out there, regardless of what outcome will fall into your lap, because it won't if you don't do anything. That's the biggest lesson I learned over the time in writing, is that it doesn't matter how perfect or imperfect your writing is. Nothing will come positively if it stays hidden. So regardless of what your budget is or the outcome of your story, just do it. Just don't worry so much about what people think, and just trust yourself.
I love that. Where's the best place for readers to find your books? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
So for social media, the best way to reach me is through Facebook and Instagram. If you want to see the crazy side of me, go on TikTok, and for education, go on YouTube, because I do a bit of teaching there. I do have a whole series of teaching writing and stories behind or inspiration for my writing. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you offer signed copies?
Well, I haven't. I do offer that, but I haven't gotten to a global level yet in terms of distribution. Usually, I just go through Amazon's self-service and just buy copies, but no one has asked me yet for signed copies. So if you want a signed copy, just message me on Facebook, Twitter. I forgot that one. There's Twitter too. All at A G Flitcher, by the way, all the same handle for all of my social media. So if you want to talk to me about a signed copy, we'll figure something out.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad we got to interview you. We'll be sure to add those links into the show notes so that everyone can find you and connect with you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.